George Bernard Shaw said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And this happens all the time. How many times have you felt like you were talking to someone and they didn't hear anything you were saying? How many times have you felt like someone was talking to you, but they weren't really saying anything? Talking is not the same as communicating. And relationships, whether it's love relationships or relationships with your girlfriend, with your family, with your kids, they require communication, not just talking. And that's what we're going to get into today. My dear friend and leading relationship strategist in her field, Sayuri Chacon, is here to talk to us about how to make relationships, how to make conversations, and how to make our connections deeper. And what she uses is a very special tool that she created. It's called You and Me Time, and they're conversation cards. But we're going to talk about so much more than those cards today. If you want to deepen your relationship with your children, with your husband, with your girlfriends, with your mom, make sure that you sit through this whole episode because this is going to be so much fun. And also at the end, we're going to hook you up with a freebie. So make sure you watch all the way through. Let's get started. I am so excited to have you on the show. And I have so much fun every time that we link up, every time that we talk, because communication is your thing. And so I feel like so many times we confuse talking with communicating, and these are not the same thing. So how about you break down those differences for us and tell us why it's so important to know the difference between talking and truly communicating with someone.
Awesome. So I think like you said, like there's a huge difference between talking and communicating. And I would say the first thing is that when we go straight to talking, we're not really being mindful of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
We go straight to, this is what I want to say. And I'm not paying attention to that person's body language, what they're doing, my tonality. I'm just focused on myself and what I want to say. Communicating, on the other hand, it's not even just about talking or speaking words. Is first you're being mindful of, is that person in the right state of mind to hear what I want to say? Or are they in the middle of a project? Are they on the phone? Are they texting? Because sometimes we get upset at our partner or kids because they're not paying attention to what we're saying, but we don't realize that we, first of all, didn't even pick up the right time. So communicating is truly, I like to say, the art of asking quality questions. It's not just about talking, and so being mindful of what kind of questions you're asking the other person, and are you to get them to talk, to get them to engage. And we hear that term engagement a lot on social media, where we're like, we put out a post and then we're like paying attention to the metrics and how many likes, how many comments, how many shares are we getting. But when it comes to like real life engagement, we're not paying attention to that, and so if our partner specifically is not giving us the feedback that we want, then we need to ask ourselves, are we picking the right time? Are we giving them the right topics to talk about, to get them to talk? Like, for example, like my husband, he loves Batman. He loves Tony Robbins. And if I want to get him to talk about something that I am interested on, I want to first start out with something that maybe will get him to open up, we'll get him engaged, and then I'll go straight into something that
nice. Okay, I like that trick. I'm gonna have to put that in my notebook because that sounds like it's a goodie. Yes. And speaking about your husband and your communication and these real deep communication moments that I hadn't thought of what you just said, that they actually start before you think they begin. They start before the words. They start with just choosing the time, making sure that that person is in the right mindset. And I have to agree with you, just thinking on, listening to what you were saying, it makes perfect sense because when I'm in the middle of work, when I'm in the middle of putting a project together, or, when I'm finalizing a webinar or I'm on my computer, it's almost instinctive that when my fiance comes to talk to me, I'm immediately like, what?
Yes.
Like, don't just say I'm busy. So it's just not going to get received the same way than, if it's one of those times when maybe we're just sitting together at the dinner table. We try to have dinner without phones or anything like that. And it's funny because that's usually when I try to start conversations with him. It's like over dinner, like I'll prepare something nice, I'll set the table, wait for a few bites, ask him how the food is, and then I'll be like, so I did a thing. Or I want to pick your brain about something. Right. So I think that that's so interesting that the timing is so important before you even start talking. Huge. Now, let's talk about you and me time, because there's a beautiful story behind your project, You and Me Time. And so, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is the easiest, fun way that I've seen to engage with your friends and partner, to connect with someone, to start conversation that is meaningful, that's really going to get you somewhere. But let's talk about the story behind You and Me Time.
So I always like to say, when people ask me, like, how did you come up with this?
Yeah.
It really just, it was a simple idea. It was a business plan in college. But I just remember my college professor coming to me and saying, you know, if you don't really know what kind of business to start, just think of a painful experience that you had gone through throughout your life. And all my life, I always saw myself as a business owner, but I never really like had an idea of like what kind of company to start. I just knew that I really wanted my company to have a heart and to impact people and to bring people together. And so I remember I went home that weekend and I was just like, what is he talking about? Like, my professor is asking me like what kind of painful experience. I don't really remember anything from my childhood that was painful, but the truth was that I was just so frozen, so numb, that I couldn't really feel and identify a painful experience that I had gone through. So I remember I had to like sit by myself, like be still, quiet all the noise in my room, and just get like focus on myself. And just, I remember started getting flashbacks of different moments that I had experienced throughout my life, moments with my dad, moments with my mom, moments with my sister. And I was just like, wow, like this moments happened so many years ago, and I couldn't really remember like a recent moment that I had created with either one of them. And
so wow.
So my parents divorced when I was 8. And right before the divorce happened, my dad said to me, Sayuri, relationships are like flowers, and if we don't water them, eventually they'll die. And in my 8-year-old mind, all I could think about is just like, well, why don't you just take a bucket of water and just water your relationship? Like, what's the big deal? You know? Like that was just like my mindset, you know?
Right.
But growing up, I remember just thinking that to myself and saying like, I don't understand, like this makes no sense. From the divorce, my sister and I and my mom, we moved around 17 times by the time I was 18.
Oh my goodness.
And so like every year it was like a new move, whether it was from Dominican Republic to New York to Florida. And I was always a new girl in school. And I hated it, you know, because it was just like, oh, great. Now I have to like introduce myself. I have to be bullied again. And it's just like this whole thing, right? And I just remember I was just like, okay, if I want to connect with people, I can't really make it about me. I have to really make it about them. So I remember like being a freshman in high school, and I picked up my binder and I started writing down like people that I had met in different classes, and finding things, observing them, like, okay, this girl is having like a Hello Kitty backpack, Hello Kitty pencil case. This guy is having like Jordans. And it's like, I would just make notes. And I was like, okay, next time I see this person, I'm going to like ask them about this, ask them about like their Hello Kitty bag. And so that was just like a way that would get them to engage. And I realized, you know, if I want to make friends, I have to get people to be I have to be interested in them instead of getting them to be interested in me. And so really You and Me Time was just like a moment where I had to, you know, coming up with the idea. It's just me realizing, hey, you know what? I haven't really experienced a moment with my family, with friends in a while. Not like I had done it when I was a child, like a little girl. And I have to find ways to make it easy for people and convenient to stay connected, because nowadays technology is making it so easy for us to be distracted, right? It's so easy for us to pick up our phone and just be on Instagram, do a live video, you know, Amazon Prime. And so
absolutely,
for us to go on a date, it's like, where do we go? Oh, I don't know if this happens to you, Gigi, where like your fiance will ask you, Gigi, where do you want to go on Friday, and you're at Friday night, and you're like, I don't know.
Wherever you want to go.
I don't know. Or what do you want to eat? And then like the time that you would have spent together, it's like the time that now goes back and forth, and you didn't even get to maximize that time. So
it does happen to us when we're choosing where we want to go, because we're both very malleable when it comes to being someplace. Like we could just be anywhere. But girl, let me tell you something. When he asks me, what would you like to eat? I always have an answer for that. I know what I want to have for lunch and dinner as I am making my coffee at breakfast. I'm the biggest foodie there is. I'm like, I already know what I want for dinner. I already know what I want for lunch. I know where I want it from too. But yes, the going out part, it can be challenging for sure.
Or even if, like, let's say you already know a spot where you want to go to for a rush, like to eat, that place may be packed that night, or the music may be super loud. Yes. There's kids crying, and maybe you want, see, this is the thing, people confuse date night as like, oh, we just go out and like we just eat. Date night can be so much more than just eating together. You know, did you actually walk away feeling more connected, more known by your partner, and vice versa? And so we just have that perspective of like, hey, you know, if you have one moment to spend with your fiance once a week, you want to make sure that you're not just eating together, you're actually engaging in conversation that leads to deeper connection.
And so how do we do that? Let's get to the tips. Let's get to the practical stuff, because I know that you have so many ways that you do this. And this is actually one of the services and things that you offer with You and Me Time. It's not just the conversation cards. It's also how to set up a beautiful experience where you're going to connect, where you are going to walk away feeling like, wow, my partner and I are at a slightly higher, closer, better level than we were 3 hours ago, right, before we went on this date. And maybe that doesn't even entail leaving the house. Maybe it's creating that connection. So how do we do it? How do we do it at home? How do we do it out and about? Give me the tea, girl.
So something that I always like to say is you need to have a weekly check-in session with your partner. And if you have kids, have it with your kids. But basically what that means is this is separate than having a date night.
Okay.
So a check-in session is a time where you will sit aside and you will talk about finances. You will talk about household chores. You would basically come in with an agenda of different things that you want to talk about. Why? Because you don't want to bring a household project in a date night. And that should have been a moment of connection. That should have been a moment where you actually learn each other. But now you're sitting there talking about kids and bills. And like, this is something that I hear a lot about. Parents tell me, oh, we always talk about work and kids and the house, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, that's not what you have to do. What you have to do is create a set aside time, which is a check-in session. You can do it in a time, talk to your partner and say, hey, what day on a weekly basis can we set aside for 30 to an hour, and we can talk about different areas of our relationship. And so something like, for example, like my husband and I, we do it on Sundays, and basically we go over, first we assess our relationship, like, hey, how are we doing like this week? How did we win together as a team? You know, what did you like? What didn't we like? So we start there. Right? Because you want to get feedback. There's Gigi, you don't have no idea how many times it happens that you will have someone in the relationship that thinks that they're so connected, they're so fulfilled and happy, and the other person, like, to be honest, maybe engaging in a social media affair, maybe looking at pornography, maybe doing crazy things, and you don't even know because you're not getting feedback from your partner. So if we just set aside that time to ask those questions, we would get feedback and we would know what's really going on.
But there has to be a level of trust there too, because when you open the door to a question like, where did we win together? You probably are going to get a positive response. But then when you ask the other side of that, where is, you know, where could I do better for you as your partner? Where could I have, you know, what didn't you like about us this week? You're going to get a less than positive response, right? So I feel like there's also, you have to come into this check-in with an open heart, and you have to come into this check-in moment ready to be vulnerable and to accept everything that you're going to hear and to say everything that you need to say with love in your heart and with love in your words, because I can easily see how if you don't approach a moment like that, it could be explosive. And instead of it being a check-in where you grow closer, it could be a check-in where you don't. So how do we approach that in a way where it's going to be beneficial? What are the keys that we need to remember when opening up to these conversations of where did we not do so good?
Right. So, I mean, and you're totally right. I think that sometimes we associate arguments and feedback and criticism as a negative, as something negative in our relationships, but I think that every conversation, even if it's good or bad, is going to lead to growth. And when you think about when you're working out, like it's not something that feels good all the time, right? But it's going to lead you to grow. And so there's actually a relationship researcher. His name is Dr. John Gottman, and he discovered that couples, he's actually able to predict divorce by 94%.
Oh, wow.
He was able to identify that couples that are able to stay together in a healthy marriage, for every one negative interaction that they have with each other, they have 5 positive ones. So let's just say that you and your fiance are having, that week that you happen to have negative interaction back to back. You're nagging, he's nagging, complaining, and you're getting into a fight, right? I think you need to be mindful and say, okay, for our check-in session, I may not necessarily want to start off with so much negative criticism. Maybe you want to start off with being like positive and give some tender love and care. You have to you have to go in with that mindset to know maybe it's not the time for me to go and criticize my partner, because he's not gonna want to go deeper into all these other things. So I think you have to make that call and that judgment. But I think that overall, check-in sessions is a proactive way to deal with relationships where you're not waiting. GiGi, the average couple waits 6 years to seek marital help or seek
Are you
help.
serious?
6 years. So no wonder why we're ending in divorce like 50% of the time, right?
Right. That's a long time to be unhappy with someone. That's a long time to feel unhappy about anything.
For sure. So if you are taking your relationship week by week and you're actually checking in on a weekly basis, you're not going to have that many negative. You're going to have a bad week. You're going to have a bad day. Obviously, we all do, right? But I find that if you treat it as checking in week to week, you're able to kind of start off the new week with a clean slate, and you're not going to have that many like layers of stacking up. And so what I like to do is kind of like set up like a structure. So like, let's say we have 30 minutes in this meeting, right? What are we going to talk about? I prepare an agenda for us, and then he may have his own topics that he wants to address, but we all have specific areas that we want to talk about. So for example, like my husband, he is the chief fun officer in a relationship. So he's actually so he's like in charge. He oversees fun, and he's like tracking how much fun are we having in our relationship.
I love that. I love it.
So like, where are we at? What did we do this week that was fun? Did we laugh together? Did we go watch a movie together? Did we go on a date, even if it was at home? So for me, I'm the chief financial officer. So I go over like the household budget. I go over like if there's any like miscellaneous expenses that may have come up, something like that. But we just have different areas that we tackle together. That frees us up to when we have a date night, we can just focus on spending time together, on having different types of conversation. So with You and Me Time, I actually created the You and Me Time cards, which is a set of 39 questions that makes it super easy. You know how we talked about like technology is making it so easy and convenient for people to be distracted.
Yes.
These are like cards that give you questions that you can just ask. Like I'll ask you one, so that way. And you can have this with your mom, with your friends, anyone. So for example, and you can actually answer it here. What does your morning routine consist of, and what's your favorite part about it?
Oh my gosh. So my morning routine consists of a few things. The first thing I do is my dog's no longer allowed to sleep on the bed ever since my fiance came into my life. But we do get a little time together in the morning. So that's definitely my favorite part. So around like 6 something, 7, she comes to the bedroom, my dog, and we put her on the bed and we have like a cuddle session for like an hour. That's my favorite part of my morning. And then from there, we go into coffee and breakfast. We always try to have breakfast together, even if it's just like 10 minutes, even if we're not sitting like cooking something, because it's one of those rushed mornings. We try to have at least like 5 to 10 minutes of coffee. We go our separate ways. I always like to try to meditate at least 5 minutes every morning. And then depending on what kind of day it's going to be, I'll either do yoga in the morning or I'll leave it for the afternoon. The only part of my routine in the morning that is 100% consistent is my cuddle session with my dog and my coffee. The other stuff kind of, it varies. There's days that he has to run out of the door and we always just connect with each other, tell each other we love each other, hug, kiss, make sure that we always have that kind of contact. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10. If it's like a weekend morning, we try to connect with each other and either make like brunch at home or we'll go someplace and obviously take the dog for brunch. But my favorite part is definitely morning cuddles with Leah. And then the consistency of it is always the coffee.
You mentioned that your dog's name is Leah. I was going to ask you like, what's her name?
Yeah, Leah the pup.
So you see, like that simple question let me know so much about you. I had no idea that you had a puppy or dog named Leah, that you love coffee, that you love meditation, and your favorite part of it. Like, I was gonna ask you if you had to, if let's say you only had 30 minutes, or you can only pick one thing of your morning routine, like what thing would you choose? And you say your dog, and you have to have your coffee.
100% Leah cuddles.
Leah cuddles.
Because you know what it is with her is that she's not a cuddly dog. She doesn't know how to dog properly. She thinks she's a cat. Like there's even times when like she'll lay on the top of the sofa and you go pet her and she's kind of like, not now, mom. Now is not the time. But in the mornings, she is the cuddliest. So it's like, if you want to love on the dog, you have to do it in the morning. It's on her terms. So it's my favorite thing ever because you just bring her on the bed. She gets right between my fiance and I, and she'll just put her paticas up and let us like give her kisses and rub her belly and touch her paws and talk to her. And it's wonderful. So if I had to pick one thing, it would totally be Leah cuddles. And like 99.9% sure that if I asked Daniel, hey babe, what's your favorite part of the morning? Is it like our breakfast? Is it our coffee together? He'd probably be like, definitely Leah cuddles. I'm like 99.9% sure he would agree with me that Leah cuddles is it.
No, I can totally relate because I have a Yorkie picture. His name is Noah, and but we do sleep with him. It's like we have to.
It's so hard not to. So Leah used to sleep with me forever before Daniel came around, but even though our bed is large, she takes up the space of like a Doberman. Like she'll push you all night long, and eventually she ends up on like half of the bed spread out like this. And then Daniel and I are like shoving our elbows into each other. It's not comfortable. So, and then I've noticed also, I think she kind of prefers sleeping on the couch. And then she likes to come in the morning. Cause when we noticed a while back, when we would start getting ready for bed, dogs are like super routine oriented. So when we would start to get ready for bed, she would just look at us like, all right, guys, bye, and go to the couch. Like she never really begs to go on the bed and sleep on the bed. So she must prefer, I would assume, that it's because she prefers sleeping on her couch where it's her couch, obviously. Right. She could just take up all the space.
She can do whatever she wants.
So I love that. Look how much time we've just spent talking on that one question. That's great.
Yes. And so something that I like to do is just sometimes like, I like to gauge where I'm at in my relationship. Like if my husband and I we may have a really hectic week at work. Mm-hmm. And based on that, I may pick, I go through the settings and figure out like, hey, what is a good question that is relevant for us to ask right now? But I think even if you don't have this set of questions, I think it's important for us to really think about like, where are we in our relationship? Like if you think about Facebook, when on the little box where you write your post, it says, what's on your mind, right? So yeah. I think that you have to it puts you to think like, okay, what's on your mind? You have to think about like, what's on my mind, but what's also on my partner's mind for me to actually say something or ask them something that will actually resonate with them. And so in that check-in, going back to this check-in session, we go through different areas of our relationship. But then we go over like, fun things like how do we want to grow together, grow closer this week? And who's going to be responsible for date night? Like, are we doing date night? Because so many times it doesn't happen because we just don't plan it. And we plan so many areas of our lives, but we just don't get to plan our relationships. And and so once we're done with our check-in session, it gives us an ability to like, okay, we feel like we are on the same page. We're like, we know where we're headed on the week. And then we also have that upcoming date night to look forward to, where we don't have to talk about bills, we don't have to talk about work, we don't have to talk about the kids or random things, because we already covered that in the check-in session.
I love that. So 2 musts that we have to include for a healthy relationship is the check-in, for sure, once a week, even if it's just 20 to 30 minutes with your partner, going over, I feel almost like it's a board meeting. I mean, you have that Monday morning meeting with your staff, right, at work, and you do that all the time. So I feel like if you're a team with your partner, if you have this relationship, I love the idea of doing a check-in where you go over your budget and your finance and the pros and cons and the goods and bads, and you go over, your evaluation of where you're succeeding, what you need to do more of, and what, maybe both of you need to cut out altogether. And then to try and get at least one date night in there a week where you're not talking about all the stressful stuff, where you're getting into the open-ended questions to connect with each other. Yeah.
Yes. Gigi, when I was engaged, my husband and I, we did a engagement retreat. And one of the
You told me about that when we first met. You mentioned that too, and I was so curious. Tell me.
So, I mean, they had us really work on like different areas like communication, conflict resolution, finance, and household chores. And household chores was actually a topic that I felt like it wasn't brought up enough. But today it's actually the number one reason for divorce. Household chores. So many wives are divorcing their husbands because the husbands are not wanting to pick up at home. And so I remember I was like, okay, so I'm gonna be super proactive. I'm gonna set up like a whole list of chores, and what are the things that we're gonna do daily. What are some chores that we're gonna do weekly, monthly, and I had it all typed up on Excel. I printed the spreadsheet. And I had it all ready to go, right? And so we got married, and I'm thinking, I remember sharing this with a friend, and she's like, yeah, right, like that's gonna you're gonna throw that away like within
that's gonna be out the window
of
the honeymoon. That's not gonna happen.
But this is how I am. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set a structure, a plan, and let's just do it. My husband was not like, he was not wired that way, right? So I remember like for weeks we would fight because like, let's say I would do laundry, but then he was responsible to fold the clothes. But he didn't know that if I do laundry on Sunday, he's supposed to fold the clothes on Sundays, right? So then the clothes would just be sitting there in the basket for the whole week.
No.
So then if I had like a meeting, a video shoot, a photo shoot, whatever I had going on, like I would think that my clothes was ready to go in my closet, and no, it was all wrinkled because it was left on the on the basket
for a week.
And so the beauty about having a check-in session is it allowed us to kind of like analyze this situation. Like this is a problem. Like what's going on? How can we tackle this together? And I find that it's so much easier to deal with a problem, a conflict, when you're not in an emotional state, when you're not like realizing that your clothes is not ready to go. Then,
why isn't this folded right now? Yeah, I can see that.
So quickly. So we were able to kind of like debrief. And like, this is what's going on. This is why it's for my husband is a why guy. So I have to tell him all the logistics of why I need something to be done. I don't know if you can relate. Like for him, it's just like, what's the big deal? You have so much clothes.
100%. But why? Why? Okay, I'll explain why.
So I had to connect the dots for him. And he's like, oh, I get it. But then for him, what happened was that because he was working, like a 40-hour job, he would come home tired. The last thing that he wanted to do on the weekend is spend it folding clothes. But I noticed that he was watching YouTube videos and he was spending time doing that. So I'm like, hey, why don't you pair up that task? While you're folding clothes, you can watch as many videos as you want, and then I'm happy, and then you're happy. So see, you're able to talk. So check-in sessions is also, it gives you the space to look at the conflicts that you guys are having and saying, hey, we're fighting about this way too much. What kind of solution can we come up with? You're not in an emotional state. It's not in the middle of the week. You're not hungry, you're not tired, and you're able to just tackle things together.
I absolutely love, love, love these tips. And I know that this is so much fun for you. Like I can tell how easy it is. There's like an energy and like a brightness around you talking about these simple ways to keep relationships alive, to keep that communication open, to keep that connection at a deeper level, the kind of connection that's going to make your relationship lasting, the type of connection that's going to give you guys the longevity that we all hope for. But, you know, like you're saying, when we don't take these things into account, when we don't make the time, when we don't take pause to reevaluate, to reconnect, and to kind of take stock on where our relationships are, it's easy for those things to kind of elude us and to like you said, let one problem stack on the other and the other and the other. And next thing you know, it's been 6 years. And, you know, I can't imagine enough therapy in the world that can fix 6 years of problems on problems on problems on problems on problems quick enough to save a relationship. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and sometimes we think that the problem is like huge and we don't want to address it because we feel like we have too much going on.
Uh-huh.
But the truth is that we are actually making things so much harder for us by not addressing it. And sometimes I have to have a venting session on my husband and say, hey, I just need to vent about, even if it's about you, but I just need to do it in a way that it's not criticizing or attacking his character, but more about the problem. I think reminding ourselves like, hey, you know, we are in this together. We are a team. We're facing life together. We're not fighting each other. That gives us a bit different perspective. So,
and that's a great point too, because oftentimes when we approach our partners because they do something or say something that we receive a certain way, we immediately get on that defensive side and we want to attack them back. And we want to, you know, instead of just saying, all right, if I love this person and this person has shown me love for however amount of time we've been together, let me first explain to them how I received what they said or how I received what was done or what happened before reacting. Because I think a great example is your husband putting away the clothes. You feel like the clothes have to be put away on Sunday if you did your laundry on Sunday because it makes sense in your head that otherwise it's going to get wrinkles.
right.
But maybe for him, it doesn't matter if you put it away on Sunday or Wednesday, as long as he puts it away, right? He'll get to it. And he's not doing it purposely to irritate the bejesus out of you that he's leaving the clothes there. He's not forgetting that they're there. It's just, it doesn't have the same urgency for him. Right. So you're absolutely right. Where instead of, you know, yelling at him because the clothes aren't done, kind of like saying, hey, babe, how come you didn't put the clothes away on Sunday when I washed them? Is there a reason? Because for me, it feels like X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And you kind of just connect in that way and learn from them, you know, why don't they put it away on Sunday when it's done? Maybe there's a reason. Maybe then you can approach the communication differently.
And I even asked him, I was like, is there a better day in the week that you would prefer? Because maybe Sunday was convenient for me to do laundry.
Right.
But I had to realize that, hey, in order for this task to be done, I need him to help me. So then maybe it's not Sunday, maybe it's Saturday. Maybe I'll do laundry on Fridays, as at least he will get it done. So I think that having those conversations, asking those questions, not assuming, not going, you know, with the objective to criticize, but more like tackling the issue together gives us that, opens us up to find solutions.
I love it. I love it. And I love talking to you, but we do want to cut this one here. I can't wait to have you back on the show. And I just want to tell you, Sayuri, it is so much fun to see that you care about the relationships, that you care about other people, and that you make yourself available through you and me time to create that kind of space and that kind of time for us, for all the rest of us out here kind of trying to figure it out. So thank you for joining us, and make sure that you guys connect with Sayuri online. You can check out all of her contact info right here, and we will be back next week with another amazing interview just for you.